2025, major sponge cities and provinces across China, Shenzhen, Hebei, Hunan, Zhengzhou, and Guizhou, have been battered by severe floods and record-breaking rainfall. Despite a massive investment of $22 billion, these cities, some of China's most important urban centers, are still facing worsening floods year after year. What really went wrong here? How did they fail to protect people so miserably? China has invested billions into sponge cities, which are designed to reduce flood risk and turn infrastructure into climate defense. Let's talk about the scale of this sponge city project, because it's far from cheap. Shenzhen, Guangdong, the Silicon Valley of China, received between $5 and $7 billion in combined funding from the government and public sources. That kind of budget should buy you a pretty flood-proof city. Still, when the heavy rains came, much of Shenzhen looked more like a water park than a tech hub. Streets vanished underwater, and commuters had to navigate through submerged intersections. Behind the footage were residents who lost everything, hopeless and exhausted, with nowhere to go. Their homes were flooded, their belongings swept away. Next is Guizhou, the emerald of the southwest, which received nearly 8 billion yuan, around $1 billion for the project. In 2022, it became the first sponge city in China to receive an international award, but for many of its residents, that award meant little. In a video, a car shop owner in Guizhou choked up as he spoke.
Step by step, it took us 7 years to get to where we are now, and everything has been destroyed. For our single store, it's worth 200,000 yuan, $28,000. Everything is newly purchased. This adds up to over 2 million yuan, $280,000. The first floor is flooded up to the ceiling, probably around here. These past few days have just been about clearing the mud. Relentless, unending mud. I personally started this business here back in 2018, and it's been running for 7 years now. All of it was destroyed in an instant.
In another heartbreaking video, an elderly woman is seen crawling onto a rooftop, shivering in the cold, having barely escaped rising floodwaters. The Central Plains, Henan and Hebei provinces got a combined 55.4 billion yuan, nearly $8 billion, making them one of the biggest recipients. These regions have long struggled with intense seasonal flooding, and this funding was meant to be a turning point, but it wasn't. Entire towns were underwater not long ago. Roads collapsed, neighborhoods were inundated, and with emergency crews overwhelmed, people were left to rescue each other. In a video, a Hebei man cried and pleaded for help.
I've lived 39 years and have never seen such a massive flood. The water in the city center is 3 to 4 meters deep. I just saw a child. The child was so scared, completely overwhelmed. Brothers and sisters, if you can help even a little, please do.
The gateway to Beijing, Tianjin City, received 1.4 billion yuan, about $200 million for its sponge city development. And still, the city flooded. In an emotional rescue, a man tightly protected his wife from the raging current, telling rescuers to save her.
Hurry, they're out.
Save my wife first, I can swim.
Don't be scared, it's okay. You come over too.
But the residents aren't the only ones who suffer when floods hit. The people who rush in to save them, first responders, volunteers, neighbors, face dangers just as real, and sometimes even more deadly. Rescuers are often the first to step into the chaos long before it's safe. They brave rushing waters, hidden debris, and collapsing roads, without knowing if they'll make it back. Many have no protective gear, just the instinct to save others. They carry children through the floodwaters and lift the elderly to safety, and push through exhaustion because someone is waiting on the other side. Some never come back. In the effort to save lives, they lose their own. And then, the aftermath. Families were left heartbroken. Sons, fathers, husbands, who walked out into the flood, never came home again. Lives were lost, and innocent children were left behind. In one heartbreaking video, a young boy cries out to the sky, pleading for his parents to come back. So yes, the funding was real, and in some places, massive. But for families who lost everything, no number can measure that kind of pain. The Sponge City project promised safety. Instead, it left too many people underwater. Which brings us to the big questions. What's a sponge city supposed to do? Why did it fail despite billions poured into it? Could this be one of the biggest infrastructure failures China has ever faced? According to the South China Morning Post, Chinese cities have spent more than 1 trillion yuan, that's roughly 140 billion US dollars, on infrastructure aimed at absorbing rainfall and reducing flood damage. That includes a wide range of urban water management efforts. But at the heart of this push was one of China's most ambitious planning experiments, the Sponge City project. Launched in 2013 by landscape architect Kong Jianyu and adopted as national policy in 2014, the Sponge City initiative promised a fundamental rethinking of how cities handle water. Its goal was to shift away from conventional concrete drainage systems and instead transform urban spaces into sponges, places that could absorb, store, purify, and reuse rainwater. The methods were rooted in nature-based solutions: permeable pavements, green rooftops, urban wetlands, and landscaped parks that would slow water down and allow it to soak into the ground instead of overwhelming drainage networks. The initiative had strong political backing. Xi Jinping described it as a reflection of China's evolving environmental vision, stating, "There is great wisdom in building a sponge city." It reflects the idea of harmonious coexistence between man and nature. In 2015, the State Council issued national guidelines, setting a clear target. By 2030, 80% of urban areas should be able to absorb and reuse at least 70% of rainwater. The project also came with serious funding. Costs were shared between central and local governments, with 15 to 20% covered by the central government and the rest funded by local authorities and private partners. China Daily reported that by 2017, more than $12 billion had already been invested in Sponge City pilots across the country. According to Science and Technology Daily, a state-owned outlet, during the 14th five-year plan period in 2025, central funding supported 60 cities in developing sponge cities, driving a total investment of 160 billion yuan, $22 billion. Not to mention public-private partnership. The Sponge City project was designed as a long-term, nationwide solution to rising flood risk, rapid urbanization, and environmental degradation. But almost a decade later, the question remains, why hasn't it delivered the results it promised? The project aimed to transform flood management, but the challenges were more social, institutional, and political than technical. According to Xi et al. 2020, the main obstacles lie in governance and implementation, not design. As highlighted in Review of Sponge City Implementation in China, Performance and Policy, by Chiki et al. 2023, the biggest challenges include high costs and limited funding, with the central government covering only 1/5 of costs, leaving local governments and investors to bear the rest. After floods in 1930 pilot cities, confidence in long-term funding has dwindled. Design flaws, with many sponge cities using Western models that don't fit China's climate, such as permeable pavements, which can contaminate groundwater instead of improving it. Insufficient capacity to handle large storms. Reuters pointed out that sponge city systems are only built to manage up to 200 millimeters of rain, far below the intensity of recent storms. Lack of local data and expertise, leading to poor planning and design, plus high maintenance costs. Urban planning issues, as many features were built for aesthetics or economy, not flood prevention. The most obvious reason, as we can all imagine, lies in the system itself, the CCP. Wang Wailuo, a renowned water conservancy expert in Germany, explained in an interview with the Epoch Times Chinese version that while Xi Jinping's idea of retaining 70% of rainfall locally and turning it into resources sounds good, the reality is harsh. He said, if you want to retain 70% of China's heavy rainfall locally, it's not feasible from an engineering standpoint, and it's far too expensive. You would need systems like those in London or Tokyo, pumping water underground, storing it, and then recovering it. This requires massive storage capacity. Technically, it's possible, but financially, it's irrational. The cost is astronomical. If you were to absorb 70% of the floods you see now, your homes would be completely flooded. Wang highlighted a key issue with the Sponge City project. Once the National Development and Reform Commission provided funding, cities rushed to implement it. The focus quickly shifted to building projects, showing visible results, and boosting GDP. The goal became securing funding, not protecting people from floods. It was all about economic growth. Wang also pointed out that when the CCP handles water conservation projects, they focus solely on completing the project. Once finished, they move on, only providing extra funding for repairs when floods occur. But they never ask, why did the flood happen in the first place? They never look into the cause. China's $22 billion Sponge City dream, part of a $140 billion fight against floods, promised safety but left millions underwater. The true cost isn't in the money. It's in the lives lost and families devastated. The project wasn't about flood prevention. It was about boosting GDP and political goals. The CCP's mismanagement turned what was meant to be a solution into just another disaster.